Hi all, I hope you enjoyed that. We rise up and we are rising up, and we've got another full and packed show for you. Right, there'll be another song coming up. There's a few things I want to cover before we get into the main part of tonight's show, which will have very little in the way of public news. There's a few pieces, a fairly lengthy sub-intel and a very lengthy intel piece with only a few op-eds tonight, so slight variation. So this week I've got two shows coming up on Sunday, this coming Sunday, an evening with Thomas with Yolande and Niek. That's at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then Jimmy Brent into the Matrix at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's this coming Sunday. Now we have had, yes again, the comedians have been out, and there's been a lot of background noise from the noisy neighbours, and the Never Do Anything's ongoing currently. It wasn't a surprise. It was a typical reaction to the show that was done last Sunday with Randy and Alan, and also Kim. But a couple of points were raised, so I thought I would clarify things, as we always do, being transparent on this show, unlike others, where some people anyway, are demanding that I be more transparent than I already am. I'll be invisible if I carry on. But apparently having my real name and pictures isn't enough. Apparently publishing the figures for the People's Club isn't enough. And apparently I am milking the People's Club. Right, okay. Well, the People's Club, over the two full years it was been going, this is still a partial year, generates $5,500 a year, which is generously given by the members. Now the expenses of $2,500, which includes the you got to have agents and you got to have licenses and this, that and the other, and it comes to roughly $2,500, which leaves $3,000 per year. Now, as I'm the operator and also the owner of that company, surely I would be entitled to some compensation, or clearly not to some people, along with the other two directors. But $3,000 split between three people is not going to make anyone rich. Now, as it stands, I do the main body of work for the People's Club, the filing, etc. And let's say, use an example, that I claimed the remaining $3,000 a year in admin expenses. So assume that I have done that. That means I'm making $57 per week for running a company. Ooh. Now, the point being, and the fact being, is neither I or the other two directors have received anything out of the People's Club for work done whilst being part of it for the past 3.5 years. But you know, facts are kind of lost on some people, all too content to project their own failings in life and lack of integrity onto others, who demand transparency when they can't even mention their own names. It's cowardly in the extreme. That's what they are, cowards. And these people were given a chance, I always give people a chance, everybody knows that, to come on our show and air their several bizarre claims and let the people decide. Predictably, they refused. Not very transparent, is it? They were also asked to provide alleged FBI and CIA case numbers, which they are allegedly reporting to, but crickets again. And this week, their latest attempt to discredit Randy Morgan's kind of failed spectacularly in a plethora of words that rendered their stupidity for all to see. They give statements but no facts. They ask for statements of the People's Club and you give them, but they're not facts. Clearly these people do not think before they write. Then they claim that David Rea, who is a known fraudster, is not in their group. But then David Fraudster Rea appears on the post. It's absolutely hilarious, and these three have nothing on the Three Stooges because they're way more funny. Curly, Larry Large and Mo, yeah. Anyway, Rea is not only connected with Eric Prince, this we do know, but we suspect he's also involved in Infraguard, and another one of mine and Randy's critics, because we exposed them a while back, is Corey Good. Now, Corey informed everyone who listened properly back in 2014 he was, or is, an FBI Infraguard agent. And if you think that was bad enough, Corey Good also trained the agencies in how to train trolls and shills against the alt media in a paid capacity. Coincidence? You decide. These people know full well the truth, but all have an agenda. It's not based on truth, but spite and their own failure in life being projected onto others. Now, some people outside and inside the group are asking who I send the People's Club donations to. Question one to those people. Do you or have you asked any other company where they send their funds to? If no, why just the People's Club? And question two, which I know is a fact, have you considered that? Should I detail and put out who the People's Club sends funds to? What if the people in the group I have sent funds to might not want that public? Have you considered that? I'm fine in putting, it makes no difference to me showing who the donations to, but I know some people wouldn't like that idea. It's a private transaction. So there you have it, $3,000 a year after expenses. So even if I took all of it, I would earn $57 a week for running a company. Would you do that? The point is, neither I, Holly or Mark have received 1 cent to date. All donations to date out of the People's Club have gone out to only the People's Club or the THI members. All. So that's the gist of that. We're talking about a company here that collects $5,500 per year, and people want to find tooth combing, which I'm more than happy to do. And yet no other company gets asked for their details or expenditures, and something is clearly amiss here. Message was I'm still receiving complaints about state groups and country groups not operating right, and most of them I ignore, but this is an easier one to deal with. Message to all state and country groups who do Zoom or state calls that have been recorded. They should all be made available and posted on the Facebook or MeWe groups of that state or country, so it's available for all concerned. Must go on the Facebook or the MeWe page. The $1 a week, a few people have asked about that. Is it an admittance that the trust is not going to deliver? No, it's not. It's something I came up with a long time ago. The trust work continues. and we'll see where that is in the intel. But from a consciousness point of view, it's actually better if the $1 a week or $1 a month program is done by the people, is it not? Because then it shows that the people are willing to make and be the change. Trust funds coming out will change some things, but will it change the people? Will it make them worse? Whereas this is everyone chipping in. Now the key to it working is not everyone in the group sends $1, which would be nice, and thanks to all who have. But the key is you get people from outside the group, because this is for everyone. And perhaps each member could set a target of 5 to 10 people outside the group, and then ask them people to get 5 to 10 people as well. Then it starts roller coasting. Perhaps people need to look at the fees section, which I'm not sure people are looking at them closely. There are certain categories, I have to be careful, certain categories that when you send fees, don't make the People's Club pay the fees. For example, there was 2 members this week who sent $1 each. Now the People's Club only got 68 cents for those donations per dollar. Check the fees category, please. Then we can get the full amount. There's been a final thing before we have another music break. There's been a very positive chat taking place this week about setting up charter schools, which is nice to see, and it's generated a lot of interest how that can continue. But there's also something that's been running in the background that's connected to Kim in some way, and they've kind of gone into it a bit and would like other people to chip in and expand on it. So maybe the group out of MeWe can hook up with this person and run with it. And the statement that Kim sent, or the message that Kim sent this morning, we have Scouts BSA, which was formerly named Boy Scouts of America, interested in forming charter schools or free private schools which follows the moral code for their Scout program whilst teaching kids critical thinking and resourcefulness. If we have teachers and or others willing to participate, please contact myself or Kim, and we can set up a separate email for them to contact. So that's the charter school. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back. Right, let's get into some news items, and the first 2 are all about children as well. And this first one is Denmark, which has been voted one of the happiest countries in the world, according to the UN's World Happiness Report. And it classifies the happiness of 155 countries around the world, and that for 7 years has placed Denmark amongst the top 3 happiest countries on a global level. Now, the fact that teaching empathy has been mandatory since 1993 in schools in Denmark is considered a factor that contributes to the happiness of the country. Empathy builds relationships, prevents bullying, and succeed at work. And it promotes the growth of leaders, entrepreneurs, and managers. Now, empathic teenagers tends to be more successful because they are more oriented towards the goals compared to the more narcissistic peers, it is said in the report. And in Danish schools, an hour a week is dedicated to the Klassens Tid, an empathy lesson for students aged 6 to 16 years. And it is a fundamental part of the Danish curriculum. Well, perhaps we can bring that here as well. So it's a few more ideas for the charter school team. And the hour of empathy is as important as the time spent, for example, on English or maths. And during Klassens Tid, the students discuss their problems, either related to school or not, and the whole class, together with the teacher, tries to find a solution based on real listening and understanding. And if there are no problems to discuss, children have simply spent the time together relaxing and enjoying hygge, a word and also a verb and an adjective which cannot be translated literally, since it's a phenomenon closely related to the Dutch culture. But it could be defined as intentionally created intimacy. Now, in a country where it gets dark very early in the year and it rains and it's fairly grey, it's a bit like Britain, hygge means bringing light, warmth and friendship and creating a shared, welcoming and intimate atmosphere within the classroom. And it is a fundamental concept for the Dutch sense of well-being, and it's also becoming a global phenomenon. Now, apparently Amazon, Spit, sells more than 900 books on hygge, and Instagram has more than 3 million posts with the hashtag hygge. Now, the American writer and psychologist Jessica Alexander, author of the book The Danish Way of Parenting, what the happiest people in the world know about raising confident, capable kids, with the Danish psychotherapist Eben Sandal, which is translated into 21 languages, has conducted field research to understand how the Danes teach empathy. And one of the ways is through teamwork. Well, I never. And thanks to which 60% of the tasks at school are carried out. And the focus, which is the key, is not to excel over others, not competitive, but to have a responsibility in helping those who are not equally gifted. So we all lift each other up, all become leaders, not the one. And for these reasons, Denmark is also considered one of the best places to work in Europe also. Competition is exclusively with oneself, not with others. And Danish schools offer neither prizes nor trophies to their students who excel in school subjects or in sport, so as to not create competition. Instead, they practice the culture of motivation to improve, measured exclusively in relation to themselves. Now, the Danes give a lot of space to children's free play, which teaches empathy and negotiation skills. Playing in the country has been considered an educational tool since 1871, and there is a collaborative learning which consists in bringing together children with different strengths and weaknesses in different subjects to make them help each other in class and working together on various projects. And the latter method teaches children from an early age that one cannot succeed alone and that helping others leads to better results. And a child who is naturally talented in maths without learning to collaborate with their peers will not go much further. They will need help in other subjects. And it's, as the Jessica Alexander said, it's a great lesson to teach children from an early age, since no one can go through life alone. She then continues, many studies show that when you explain something to someone, like a math problem for example, you not only learn the subject much better than you would do by memorising it yourself, but you also build empathy skills which are further strengthened by having to be careful about the way the other person receives the information. And having put oneself in their shoes to understand how learning works, going to a lesson of empathy gives great satisfaction and joy to Danish children and prepares them to become happy adults. Nice happy story from a nice happy country, and a lesson to us adults. If the children can do that in Denmark, what's stopping the adults in the THI club, state and country groups, from adopting the same thing? No competition. All leaders, all share ideas, and all lift each other up. We're going to my place, hometown now. Proposed new rules on vaccinations could result in thousands of Liverpool children being barred from school, according to the Health Secretary Matt Hancock. He told the Conservative Party conference this week that the government was seriously considering banning children who had not had the full vaccine programme. Great. You're not going to learn anything there anyway. And it comes as rising numbers of children don't get all the vaccines recommended by the NHS, and cases of measles have begun to rise. Analysis of Public Health England figures last year suggests more than 16,000 school-aged children in Merseyside and Halton, born between 2000 and 2016, had not had the first MMR jab, and as many as 33,766 children in the same group have not had the second dose by the time they turn 5. So speaking earlier this week, Mr Hancock said there was a very strong argument for making some vaccines compulsory for children attending school. Okay, we don't really want to go to your schools. Let's create our own, where vaccines are not needed. Under the charter school, the only restrictions, as I understand it, I don't know too much about it, is on the canteen and what you're feeding the children. The curriculum and everything else is decided by the school. So that first piece, or these first two news pieces, can be implemented into those schools. It's not compulsory to have vaccines, it's a choice, free will. And we can adopt empathy, as well as also it would be a nice idea to have an hour empathy each week and an hour meditation each week to reflect, and then we can at least then have more rounded children who can then teach the adults how to behave. The death toll from an ongoing anti-government protest in Iraq has almost risen to almost 100 this week, according to the country's Parliamentary Human Rights Commission. It also said more than 3,000 people had been injured. Now, the authorities have tried to take control of the demonstrations, which began last week with curfews and near total internet blackout. And on Saturday, riot police blocked major meeting points in Baghdad. Now, the protests are seen as the first major challenge to Mr Mahdi's fragile government, which was installed by certain agency people, as we know. And nearly a year since he came to power, demonstrators say they are taking a stand against unemployment, poor public services and, go figure, corruption. And that is at the heart of the discontent faced by young Iraqis today. Now, the unrest began spontaneously with no formal leadership in most Shia areas in the south, and it quickly spread. Now, when you can understand that Iraq is the world's fourth largest reserve of oil, which is why we attacked, or why the US military attacked, but 22.5% of its population of 40 million were living on less than $1.90 a day as recent as 2016. Fifth were living on $1.90 a day. And 1 in 6 households has experienced some form of food insecurity. All that oil being stolen by Bush's Netanyahu, Khomeini, and none of it's going. That wealth is going to the Iraqi people, like Venezuela. Same thing. Now, the unemployment rate was 8% last year, but among young people it was 15%, and almost 17% of the economically active population is underemployed. 10 days after he testified in the murder trial of the former Dallas police officer who got jail, Amber Geiger, so she got 10 years jail. The key witness, Joshua Brown, was gunned down at his apartment complex this week. Brown, who lived across the hall from Botham Jean at Dallas Southside Flats apartment last year, when Officer Amber Geiger walked into Jean's apartment, mistaking it for her own, and then killed Jean. And Brown's testimony during her murder trial was key because he was able to describe the officer's actions immediately after she killed their neighbour, now dead. Make of that what you will. Hundreds of Extinction Rebellion activists, climate freaks, have been arrested as protests take place across the globe. 30 people were charged with committing offences in Sydney after hundreds blocked the road, while more than 100 were arrested in Amsterdam. You notice these climate change people leave a lot of trash behind. Obviously not worried about leaving trash behind and trashing the planet. Protests have taken place in countries in the US, UK, Germany, Spain, Austria, France and New Zealand. Protests by climate change activists are expected in some 60 cities over the next 2 weeks. And the group is also causing disruption in London, where more than 270 people were arrested on Monday. 2 more news bits before we go into sub-intel. Foreign Minister Israel Katz. What a convenient name that is. Israel Katz. Oh dear. On Sunday confirmed that he had been advancing non-aggressive treaties with several Arab countries in the Gulf, which is a historic démarche, he said, that could end the conflict between Jerusalem and those states. And he said, recently I've been promoting, with the backing of the Prime Minister, a diplomatic initiative to sign non-aggression agreements with the Arab Gulf states. And he said it is a historic move that will end the conflict and enable civilian cooperation until the signing of peace agreements. And what appeared to be an acknowledgement that no Arab country is currently willing to establish full diplomatic relations with the Jewish state as long as the Israeli-Palestine conflict remains unresolved. And on September the 23rd, that's when he did all this chatting and trying to arrange agreements. And it all sounds rather good, but here's the kicker, and there always is with these people. Katz then tweeted that he had held talks with an unnamed counterpart from an Arab country with which Israel does not have formal relations, and said that they had discussed, quote, ways to deal with the Iranian threat and a process for boosting civilian cooperation. What essentially that is, knowing how those people, Zionists, work, is they're trying to get certain Arab countries on their side, where they will not intervene if they go and attack, for argument's sake, Iran, or they will garner support with them. And they're trying to isolate Iran. So not as historic as he made it out to be. Power company, PG&E, Rothschilds owned, is cutting around 800,000 homes this week electricity. Businesses and other locations in Northern California in an attempt, they say, to prevent wildfires. And large swathes of the San Francisco Bay Area, although not the city itself, have lost power, which has angered residents. Now, the region's utility company, Pacific Gas and Electric, has warned the shutdown could last several days, and the company's transmission line started the deadliest wildfire in California's history last year. No, it didn't. It was direct energy weapons, courtesy of the SSP. With weather forecasts predicting high winds, the move is intended to prevent the risk of fallen power lines igniting more wildfires. And they said the conditions are ripe. Dry fuel, high winds, warm event. Any spark can create a significant event, says Ray Riordan, Director of Office of Emergency Management in San Jose. And the National Weather Service has issued a red flag warning for the Santa Cruz Mountains, North and East Bay regions until Thursday, warning that conditions could result in the strongest offshore wind event in the area since the October 2017 North Bay fires. This is the problem. I mean, we've referenced this in shows before. Is in this day and age, surely there's better preventative measures than just shutting everyone off. You know, this is the problem with utilities being owned by rogue families like Rothschilds, and a bundle of shareholders taking all the company profits out, and nothing getting put back into the infrastructure of it. You know, the same in the UK. The water companies and the electric companies. You know, the sewerage in the UK, particularly in London, is all collapsing. Why? Because they've never invested a single penny into it. That's why. And essentially, they're all Victorian sewer pipes. And the utilities should be a public-owned company and non-profit also, in my opinion. No shareholders, a cooperative run venture by the people. You know, there's certain things, it seems that people have got to make money on everything these days, but these are essentials of life and really should be making profit on them, particularly some of the profits that they're making, and funneling into bulging into people's pockets that are already bulging because they're involved in several other ventures. That needs to stop. Where are we going next? We're going back to children again. Subintel. This is a Breitbart report about Planned Parenthood, which we, of course, we covered in From Russia with Love 4 or 5, I think it was. And they have been boasting lately about being the largest sex education provider in America, which is a complete and utter lie. We did cover the figures in that. But now concerned parents are pushing back. And in September in Minnesota, hundreds of parents rallied against a new sex education proposal that is being considered in their state. And State House File 1414 would require that comprehensive sex education be taught in all pre-kindergarten through 12th grade public and charter schools in the state, according to the report anyway. And concerned parents said with the Child Protection League said the proposed curriculum encourages early sexual exploration in graphic detail and uses porn-like images to teach children as young as 10 that consensual sex is perfectly normal. It also allows representatives of the Planned Parenthood abortion chain to teach children in their classrooms, the group said. CSC, Comprehensive Sex Education, grooms children for early sexual activity, making them vulnerable targets for sexual abuse, experimentation and also trafficking. And the Child Protection League states on its website, according to the FBI, sexual predators groom children with pornographic images and explicit sexual instruction to remove natural defences. We call that criminal. Planned Parenthood calls it education and says it's perfectly normal. Now, the Minnesota State Representative Peggy Scott said Planned Parenthood, a billion-dollar abortion provider, helped to write the curriculum. So members of the public need to understand that Planned Parenthood, which is a very controversial organisation, is putting forth its agenda into our public schools, she said, and a number of concerned politicians and parents spoke during the rally in late September on the state capitol steps, advocating against the controversial sex education bill. Now, according to the Child Protection League, which organised the rally, one of the more disturbing materials is a book for 4th graders called It's Perfectly Normal, which is recommended by Planned Parenthood for the children, according to the group, even though it includes graphic descriptions of sex. The book describes sexual intercourse as having sex that can involve the penis and the vagina, or the mouth and the genitals, or the penis and the anus, according to the report. And Minnesota is not alone in complaining. In the past several years, concerned parents in Pennsylvania, Michigan, California, Washington State, New York, North Carolina, Florida, Iowa and other parts of the country have protested Planned Parenthood's involvement in their students' education. Why would an abortion clinic be involved in schools? Particularly one with, of their ilk. In one recent case, parents at a Pennsylvania school said a Planned Parenthood partner group taught 7th grade students graphic details about oral sex during a science class. Mind-boggling. Of course, Planned Parenthood is a misnomer in and of itself, as they abort more children than they save, as covered in the From Russia with Love show. So it should be called Planned Non-Parenthood. Of course, they're funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, that has a penchant of funding anti-life programs, as again we've covered in several shows. And this is another of their social engineering programs launched here 100 years ago, which was originally was based on eugenics, population reduction of the whites, given Ms. Sanger only focused on Western countries, and the populations of India, China and Africa have the highest birth rates. Plus Catholics in Ireland. Them as well. And this programme now continues its anti-life programme. It's breaking down all the barriers into a free-for-all. And as proven in the show, little of their resources, can't remember the actual figures, go into baby or mother care. It's all about the genetics and abortions. This was a kind of a alarming story. A Florida juror this week has been sentenced to 10 days in jail after he overslept and missed the trial. Deandra Somerville of West Palm Beach was impaneled for a civil case in August, but he failed to notify the court when he didn't show up. Well, if he's asleep, how can he notify them? Anyway, Judge John Castronakes held the 21-year-old in criminal contempt and sentenced him to 10 days in jail, 150 hours community service and a $223 fine. Now, he did appeal against the sentence, arguing it was excessive, and he was released from custody last Sunday, and he appeared in court on Friday. He said, "Now I have a record, and I almost feel like a criminal now, and now I have to explain this in every interview." Now, Somerville was one of the 6 jurors, and it was the first time serving on a jury, and he told local media he slept through his alarm and woke up hours later and realising he had missed the trial. Now, unfortunately, which was partly his fault, he did not call the court to let them know, because he said he felt nervous. And he said he also had to leave for his afternoon job at after-school programmes for the city parks and recreation departments. So, 10 days jail for that. This is the imbalance. You miss jury service and get jailed for 10 days. But you acquire and disperse national secrets and documents, commit perjury and blatant national security issues and get a slap on the wrist. Hello, Mr. Comey. If this is the way the system is going to work against the people, then we the people should boycott the jury service. Jury service is another example of the people running their corrupt system. Non-compliance ends it. If they can't be and act fair in their courts, then why should we facilitate it? No jury, no courts. This is something I would advise all people to do. If you've got a spare few hours or a day, there's a tender court and observe for a few hours the levels of stupidity, unfairness and outright trampling on people's civil liberties. I can assure you, you will learn much. It boggles the mind. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell described the US economy on Friday as being solid, noting the central bank must do what it can to keep it there. He said, while not everyone fully shares economic opportunities and the economy faces some risks, overall it is, as I like to say, in a good place. I'm glad he thinks that, because nobody else does. And Powell said in prepared remarks delivered at a Fed Listens event. Really? Since when did the Fed listen to anybody? Well, The event was part of a monetary policy communication review by the Fed. Our job is to keep it there as long as possible, he said. While we believe our strategy and tools have been and remain effective, the US economy, like other advanced economies around the world, is facing some longer-term challenges from low growth, low inflation and low interest rates. Adding, the Fed is examining strategies that will help it achieve its inflation goal of 2%. Is the Marine call-up linked to California or some other major event? Time will tell. Did you know a 1995 CIA and DIA document released told of 20,000 children going missing in the UK each year? 20,000. And 1.1 million children and adults every year in America alone. 900,000 of which are children, from my research and knowledge. Yes, you heard that right. You know, if you ever losing hope that of the funds not arriving, which I can understand, you must never give up on the children who still to this day go missing at record levels. A lot of it has been scaled back. There's been a lot of arrests, some public, a lot private. But we must never lose sight of those facts, those figures and those crimes. Final sub-intel before we go into a music break. But this is something that came to my attention, and it covers a lot of what I covered in From Russia with Love 7. And this further adds to it. You know how they always like to take the piss and put things in the movies? Well, here's another one called The Syndrome. And it's a thriller driven by a secret cult from the deep recesses of the Cold War, it was described as. And it is a secret that encompasses an illicit program of human experimentation using pain, drugs and hypnosis to create the perfect assassin. Like I said, they put it all in movies right in our face. So sensitive was this program that only a handful of people have ever been privy to more than a small part of it. The activity's existence was first hinted at by the Rockefeller Commission, there's that group again, in a 1974 report on domestic CIA operations. And the Commission devoted just 2 sentences to that program, whose documentary record had been destroyed, also common, by an outgoing CIA director. Doesn't take much to realise who that was. Now, despite that director's attempt to impose institutional amnesia on the agency he'd headed, 7 boxes of financial documents were later found in a dusty cabinet at the agency's headquarters in Langley, Virginia, and the paper trail continued within those boxes, wound its way through a complex of medical institutes, hospitals, and foundations that had given cover to a behavioural modification program in which human guinea pigs had been tested to destruction without their knowledge or consent. And beyond those 7 boxes, no other records are known to exist. Even so, the New York District Attorney's Office continues to seek homicide indictments against CIA officers who are believed to have murdered a key scientist in the program. Though few records of its existence remain, the program is known to have begun during World War II, when the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, attempted to develop a truth drug in an effort to elicit information from prisoners of war. That was the cover. And the subjects of these earliest experiments were captured by Axis soldiers and American GIs who were facing court-martial for various crimes. Now, when the war came to an end, the program did not. Instead, it is stated it took a strange turn and gained momentum. What had been a search for truth drug morphed into a mind control program whose purpose was to create a murderous automaton whose memory could be edited by his handlers at headquarters. Once you get through stage 3 of the MK Ultra, you no longer know who you are, or your family is, or what you've done, or where you've been. The need for assassination utility of this kind has been articulated a few years earlier by a professor of anthropology at Harvard. No surprise. A former OSS operative who was himself implicated in World War II assassination plots. This was the late Carlton Kuhn, who, in an after-action report to OSS Chief Wild Bill Donovan, wrote, "We cannot be sure that the clear and objective scholars who study the existing social systems and draw up the blueprints for a society to suit our technology will always be heard, or that their plans will be put into operation." And he went on, "We can almost be sure that this will not be the case. Therefore, some other power, some third class of individuals aside from the leaders and the scholars must exist. These are your shell people, the shell corporations, the private security people. And this third class must have the task of thwarting mistakes, in other words, covering up, diagnosing areas of potential world disequilibrium, and nipping the causes of potential disturbances in the bud. There must be a body of men whose task it is to throw out the rotten apples as soon as the first spots of decay appear. In other words, the people who won't go along with it are cast out as rotten apples. And he said a body of this nature must exist undercover. It must be either a power unto itself, which it is, or be given the broadest discretionary powers by the highest human authorities. With the outbreak of the Korean War, Kuhn's proposal seems to have been melded with the truth drug investigations which were then underway and were also given a jump start. Now, the Pentagon and the CIA arranged for the publication of articles about communist brainwashing in popular magazines such as the Reader's Digest and the Saturday Evening Post. And the message was explicit. There was a mind control gap, and this created a groundswell of political support for the agency's decision to embark upon a full-fledged mind control program of its own. Political support for it. Now, it began in 1952. The CIA began to work with the Special Operations Division in the Army's Biological Research Centre at Fort Derrick. Bad place there. Studying the covert use of chemical and biological weapons amongst the drugs studied was LSD, the red pill. for those of you who don't know. All those in queue going, we're red pilling, or talking about MK Ultra mind control programming. Oops. The subject in these experiments were people on the margins of society. They included the inmates of prisons and also mental patients, as well as homeless alcoholics on Skid Row. Those who espoused unpopular political views or whose lifestyle was perceived as immoral were also considered what they called fair game. And so they became unwitting guinea pigs in the spook's quest to create the Manchurian Candidate, another movie that told you what they were doing. Now, occasionally it came out in the documents that the agency experimented on its own, and sometimes with terrible consequences. Back in 1954, Dr. Frank Olson was invited to a gathering at a CIA retreat near Deep Creek Lake, Maryland, and at that gathering we are told that Olson and 9 other people were given high doses of LSD, the red pill, without their knowledge. And by all accounts, Olson's reaction was negative in the extreme, and he plunged into severe depression, and he suffered hallucinations for days and was taken to see a therapist in New York. While there, and under the most mysterious circumstances, he fell to his death from an upper story window of the Statler Hotel. Oh my, coincidence or not. Of course, Mr. Olson's death was pronounced as suicide, but apparently the case has been reopened and is now under investigation by the New York District Attorney's Office. Meanwhile, the agency carried on, regardless of killing their own people, but fearful of adverse publicity from incidents such as the one that claimed Olson's life, the CIA shifted many of its operations to the West Coast and also abroad. One such activity involved safe houses in New York and Washington where prostitutes were paid to bring clients in. Fair game, people. The clients would be dosed with drugs and their behaviour observed by CIA operatives sitting behind two-way mirrors. Now, with Olson's death and these other operations were then moved to San Francisco, where the fallout from such activities could be more easily controlled. Now, still other experiments were funded abroad. Oh my, here we go. McGill University in Montreal, Dr. Ewan Cameron. Oh my. Mr. Cameron is part of the Green Programme and worked with Mengele. Carried out a series of experiments for the CIA, effectively turning his patients into vegetables, and the process, which Cameron calls depatterning, relied upon intensive electroshocks followed by 30 to 60 days of drug-induced sleep to destroy existing patterns of behaviour. In the end, the patient will become tabula rasa, her mind wiped clean and empty, and elsewhere scientists such as Maitland Baldwin agreed to go one step further, volunteering to carry out terminal experiments in sensory deprivation. Patient subject victims would be buried alive for an indefinite period in stimulus-free boxes, coffins in other words, and in effect they would become the CIA's very own zombies. And behind the code words Bluebird, Blue Chicken, same program, Pandora and Artichoke, the CIA and its sister agencies experimented upon a large and diverse group of subjects, many of whom suffered terribly, using drugs and hypnosis, microwaves and radiation, and the experimenters sought ways to affect moods, impose selective amnesia, create multiple personalities, that's the super soldier program, induce trance states by rapid and remote means, and generate so-called screen memories. This last one involved the creation of false memories as a way of blocking genuine ones. When they come out at the third stage of MKUltra, they're given pictures of their family, which are not their family, they're actually CIA handlers, but their brain has been wiped that much, they don't recognise their own family. And the key plot point in the syndrome, it is also a way to impel an agent to commit suicide when his usefulness is at an end. And the mind control program initiated by the CIA in the 1950s was officially discontinued in the 1960s, which is a complete and utter lie. And many critics of the agency insist that the most promising research continues under other auspices at home and abroad. And this book, The Syndrome, is about that. Bad people doing the most heinous things you can imagine. We'll have more about that three-letter group later. Right, we're going to have a music break. This song is going out to Matt Schuler, aka Himotep, also known as Jesus' brother, and famous for lying and making a prat of himself with his partner Megan on the Soul Swapped Tolak show. This is for Matt. Hi all and welcome back. A fairly lengthy intro. I suppose the main piece could be described as an op-ed piece, but it needs to go into the intro. And we'll get to that shortly. Now there was a mention last week about a deal with the Fed and the banks. And that was cancelled, and no further interactions were planned to go on with those harvest and control freaks. And it's time for real patriots. You know, we've got millions of them in this country saying how much they love this country, both civilian and military, notwithstanding the Pentagon are fully aware of who and what and their status surrounding the Federal Reserve itself. You know, some of you signed an oath, uphold it. We have a foreign invasion on our shores, and you do not think that that's not enough of a national security issue to act. You know, greatest military in the world, we're told, and you can't or won't protect your own country and families from foreign invaders. So that was the status on Friday. Then on Monday morning, the usual four horsemen of the apocalypse, the Fed, Langley, Pentagon and military, all decided they would have several meetings. Allegedly, it was said to be separate, but it appears to us that they were all in the same meeting, given they all called at the same time. And Monday morning, they were all going ahead and working on a plan without the trust as of Monday morning, which is fine by us. It makes not a jot of difference to us whatsoever. But by Monday evening, and their latest attempt to open the Fed window had failed for the 1560th time, 3 times a week for 10 years, people, and failed every single time. When that failed to deliver again, the four horsemen plus the White House all rang looking for funds again. Now, as of Monday, I suspect it was another ruse, but you never know. You've always got to try. But remember, they suffer more than we do. We lose a bit of time. They lose pay. Then they put it off again as the RV was happening again on Wednesday. It didn't, and back they came again. And more beatings. The Pentagon Group, the CIA, the government, the military and the SSP all have no plan. None. The Rothschildians, the Order, the Chinese elders, the M1s, the former Pindars, all have no plan. They cannot formulate a plan that includes releasing the funds for the projects and the people and them staying in control of it. Why? Because it's not possible. They know it and we know it. But they just keep stalling, hoping for a divine intervention to save them and their control system. And we promise you, that's not happening. And after all you have put us through, we're not quitting either. There'll be more of that update after this piece. This was given to the Order, and in particular the dragon elements of it, 10 years ago, as a final warning. It reveals much of their status and how they have gone about things. And essentially it opened up with a poem. The secrets of the universe are laid before you openly. See what you will, remembering that all is but an illusion. There are 3 mystical steps that will remain constant. The first is the esoterical, that which come from within. Oh my. The second is the spoken word and how it is expanded upon. And the third is the written word and how it is interpreted. Until that day when all shall be reality. And then they received this. This was the secret to unlock your mind. Like I said, this is to the Order and the Dragon Clowns, plus other levels of the former control system. And it just goes to show that free gifts and aids to help you were pointless. As you have proved over and over again, all you ever wanted was a way to unlock the riches and treasures to be a personal benefit to you and not for all mankind as they were intended. It is clear now beyond doubt that none of you are worthy to be the guardians of mankind, as we have looked into your mind and soul for your true answers. Because your words, despite the warnings, are filled with lies and treachery. You have to go back a few years to remember what your job functions and your job targets were. We wanted to have the best people available at the most dangerous time of all mankind. That's why the dragon pills were given out originally. Life longevity. So that at the time of prophecy, for those of you who don't know, I tell you where the 9 dragon lords come together and join a circle, the world, at least half of the world, can be saved. That's a small part of it, but so far it seems I'm the only one left. The titles you have given yourselves now, like elders, grand elders, dragons by various colours, or as you know yourselves, are false. You are just old people who in their own desperation just to survive have condemned the whole planet to extinction, and if anybody thinks this is not true, who's fooling who? We picked chosen people to complete the simple plan. And all you have to do, just to remind you, is to wait until that time when it would be necessary to come forward, and every 4 years, as the Silver Lady crosses the moon, as foretold in prophecy, I have returned. 4-year loop. None of you recognized me. Shame on you. This one time, because it was your last deadline, I was very open about my abilities and who I really am and who I really was throughout time. Passed all your tests, all your questions, played all your games, and still none of you have seated at our table. You have failed. The mission has failed because of self-interest, your wrong belief that you have the right to be emperors and princesses, and by just surviving so long and passing along information to your descendants, you and they have been awarded a place in heaven just by being chosen. This is a mistake. You are wrong. There was a plan. As you didn't know what the plan was, how could you follow it? You try to do things yourselves. Your thinking has become worse than the people out there. You have become more corrupt, more greedy than the people we have tried to keep the treasures from. It's not yours. You were the guardians. The reason all your misguided plan fails is because you didn't understand the true nature of what this is. We appreciate many of your ancestors have made great sacrifices, and we may reveal the oath that has been taken so that those individuals can be redeemed. But sadly for the rest of you who have only thought of yourselves and not of the greater good, are doomed. The plan was simple, but none of you bothered to work it out, because it was about everybody, and that's the one thing you have been unable to do. Think beyond yourselves. This common thought that have prevailed among your so-called top elders and those who have controlled them is to make the world worse, not better, so that the wealth and the treasures which you have tried to steal from the sacred hoard will be in some way meant more to you. This alone is so far from the end of the scale that you have become the rest of the people, whom we've been trying to protect from, and that's why we must protect them from you. Whether here in physical plane or above at the divine palace. Palace used to mean constellation in the past. You have been shown the secret, something bigger than yourselves, and you have missed the simple point that this is the place of the mind and time. When you agreed to follow the plan up there, for example, and then in the next instance think you can corrupt that and make it greater for yourselves and become kings and princes, and that the world will crawl over to you, the point is we can hear you. we can look into your heart, soul, and your mind. Remember, this is about the mind, body, and soul. You are truly stupid if you don't think we can hear you. Lies, deceit, and corruption you wear like a cloak, and only the people you are fooling is yourself. Only some of you have actually taken the next step there and answered the questions of the guardians, and you know who you are because you have seen more of the place than those in the waiting room. And if any of you have actually bothered to go through the gate of no gate, you would have seen me on the other side and known who I am without question, fear, or doubt. Some of your so-called grand elders called meetings at these special rooms, and instead of having it all together, you have them in little groups so that you could get your points across. Divide and conquer, you see. Just recently, you have been calling me to these meetings. Why? Because they were losing. And I was attending 7 meetings at the same time in different rooms, and you still don't know who I am. And even you have left the room or the waiting room and gone to the reception area and managed to answer 5 truthful questions to the guardians. You see me standing there waiting with open arms for you. Some of you have tried, only got 1 question right. Most of you, none of them right. Because you don't know the nature of your heart. This is why I talk about going into the heart centre, not the mind. You must be honest with yourselves, people. Like the poem above, we have laid the universe open for you, and you are under some delusion that you are chosen and special. Not anymore. You have been chosen to perform a task. You have failed. Now that so many of you are dropping like flies, I've seen more of you at the waiting room in a mistake to believe that by being there, you have ensured place in heaven. This is not so. That room is a waiting room for those who have not done their tasks. You have been given the chance to find out more, yet none of you have gone through the gate of no gate. Among those among you who wish to control, your main goal is to be in control. Worst of all, you are trying to control me. Don't you children understand yet that in your desire and blindness to control, you are being manipulated and controlled by others? Husbands, wives, friends, advisors, people who have steered you off the path of righteousness, and you have let them. So don't blame them. By our very nature, we cannot be controlled. We just follow the plan. The plan works. None of you bothered to find out how the plan works. You made out legends about it, assuming titles like this colour or that colour dragon, without understanding that esteemed a position entails. If it were true, you wouldn't be getting this letter. You would be sitting with me writing it. Does that make sense? Do you understand yet? The wealth of the world is not for single individuals. It is, as the name suggests, simple really. It's for the wealth of the world. You are offered heaven on earth and decided in your arrogance to make it a hell on earth for everyone. Because like spoiled children, you want everything for yourselves now, without cause and consequence to others or the planet itself. Shame on you. The great shadow conspiracy that has tried to manipulate the world since time began has used you, the dark forces. You have become as they are. Let's go back to all the tests and puzzles that put before us, things that nobody else but people like us could possibly know, things out of time. Proof of the proof has been given, and the only thing that keeps you away is your guilt and shame, because you now know that we can see right through you. 2020 vision. All I ask of you is that you look into the mirror and see it for yourself. If you like what you see, do not come. Stay away. If, however, you wish to redeem yourself and show true remorse, you may find redemption. And I will just remind you once again that your time is very short. As many years have behind you, you have less ahead of you. With all the people dying or getting sick or showing age, remember that look in the mirror, and for once being honest with yourselves. If you can't believe that image, then look around you. Now is the time. Stand up. Be counted in a true sense that you can be counted on to fulfill this mission, which it seems none of you, not one, knows its true form, because you have been testing you. We have been testing you, and you don't even need to tell me you have failed at every endeavour so far. I wouldn't mind if I hadn't gone into all that trouble to prove to you who we are. So the conclusion must be your actions or lack of them are deliberate. We are the voice in the wind that whispers only truth. And sadly, you are in such chaos within that hurricane swirl above you, so that truth can never reach you. It was all laid out for you. We have just come to remind you of your pledge and your promise and reap the rewards, because we reward for efforts, but instead of giving your God-given talents and treasure at your feet for good purposes, they are the very things that held you down and not lifted you up. These treasures were never yours to use, as you were their guardians. They were to be protected until the direst times of human history. Now really is the time. You must have noticed the safeguards that stop you from using them, as none of you have understood the system that we set up. All about intent. We've covered that in previous shows. Unless you have the right frequency, you can't access. As I understand it, there's less than 5 people on this planet who can access it, and none of them are clowns. All you have done is open the doors to the shadow conspiracy to seize and take those treasures, and sadly not even to use, because they cannot without the right heart and mind. These things are cursed. Oops. They have found themselves to be true and only wish to take possession of them, so we cannot use them ever again. So the fools among you who have given it away, and who still using the excuse, oh, we didn't know, we just wanted to survive, you and you alone have caused the prophecy of the end of the world and all mankind to come into being. Now, if you're still under the false idea that you, just by being chosen alone, would give you a place in heaven without completing your mission, do not deserve the high regard we held for you, and those among you who have gone out of your way to select advisers and tricksters. Who promised you the world and given you nothing? For we know your intention was to steal the treasures you were meant to protect. These people think they can hide, you see. But there are some people and beings who can read from afar. Hearts, minds, thoughts. There is no hiding on that level. The grain of rice that you have stolen on each of these attempts could have fed the world, and each grain of rice that you gave away could have fed the world. We see you, we hear you, and we despair. Those of you who went to the railway station to board the gravy train, or those of you who went to the docks to wait for the boat to come in, even those of you who waited at home for opportunity to knock on your door, just by its very nature of trying to use the sacred treasures for your own benefit, have not understood it. You were told to wait until you were told the time was right for the good of the world. The time is now, very nearly up. Now I know the concept of time is not your strongest suit, because you've used it as an excuse. We waited long enough. Two things. One, who were you to judge when the time was right? Now you are still thinking of the treasures were yours even now. Now I know some of you really know that this mission was for a special purpose, and the term chosen people is a self-selection process. Only those who chose to come forward, now at the end of time here, can lay claim to that title and that privilege. Only those who choose to come forward now at the end of time can lay claim to that title and privilege. And the silly thing is that you would have gained even greater rewards than what you were trying to steal from us. But for some reason you are happier stealing a grain of rice a day than having a bowl of rice for everybody for all eternity. If you really want to be saved and rewarded as promised, whatever your position you were within the structure of society that we set up, even those invited in by others and not by us, perhaps it is your destiny if you choose wisely. Now the choice is yours. Come or stay. And any past transgressions or mistakes or faults or evil deeds may be forgiven. Just put fear behind you. It's safe because it's the right thing to do. This is your destiny. Follow it. If this warning is not heeded, we can promise you this. The worst amongst you shall live to see the suffering and collapse of this world and the people around them firsthand. Those of you who just give up shall be shown the mercy of death, which you will be no good to us one way or another. Death will seek you. Those among you who actively seek to steal the treasures shall know the answer. You shall live in the hell on earth which you created, and shall see and live the sufferings of a dying world. You shall remain alone, without a friend in the world or in heaven. You made this hell on earth, so shall it be. The best amongst you shall be rewarded on earth and in heaven. As you have proved beyond doubt, our faith in humanity was not misplaced. To you, I promise your efforts have not gone unnoticed. We all thank you. One last warning. We want you to pass this amongst yourselves and talk about it to everybody you can, everybody you know, so you get it twice. Somebody else likes you, but be warned. If, as before, you claim this message and this call to duty to come for a meeting as your own, with everybody getting the message from other sources, your falsehood would shine bright. The self-selection process to be chosen is in each and every one of your hands. You must choose yourself now. This is not a command. This is a matter of conscience. You come or stay. Freedom of choice, freedom of will, and if others choose for you, they must bear the weight of that sin. And let us all just say one small thing on that. For those of you who don't believe in heaven or afterlife, you won't believe redemption either, or remorse. So you've already chosen. You won't be there. But how deep in hell you will be depends on how many people you stop coming. For those you don't believe in redemption or heaven or afterlife, then it won't matter to you whether everybody knows or not. So you might as well pass it along to see what happens. You never know. One of the people may vouch for you. You need redemption more than others. Sadly, you know it. Give everybody the chance to come. Don't choose for them. Let them choose for themselves. We will ask everyone who sent them this message. It is a point-scoring theme. There is plenty on the table to share out amongst everybody. It's a good plan. If we follow the plan, and as far as we can tell, which nobody should disagree with us so far, we are the only ones who know the plan, and therefore the only ones who can reap the benefits. So wouldn't you like to be on the winning side just once, after all the pain and sufferings and sacrifice, for a divine plan to bear fruit in the physical world? Instead of stealing it, would you like to just earn it for a change and actually be on the winning team? We invite you, choose wisely, choose survival. If it is guilt and shame that has kept you come forward, all may be forgiven. If your excuse has been up until now is that It is not within the rule of the family society. Let us remind you once again that there is just but one rule, and that is to follow the plan. And as we have already seen, nobody but us knows the full extent of the plan. So any rules that have been made up to control you, to force you against your true nature of a pure spirit of conscience, as you once were, so shall you be again as a pure spirit of conscience. So those of you who have been holding back the true nature and spirit of our people and their true purpose, you need to come back to the fold more than most and find redemption. This is your last chance. Help our people fulfill their destiny. Do not hold them back any longer. Look within yourself, hear the truth of these words, and know in your heart that this is the right thing to do. Remember, this is your world. We are just guides. The point of this whole thing is that you have all passed each other and every deadline set to you, so that now less and less can be done. There is one final deadline which we have been asked or pleaded to give you by the masters of time in the divine palace, who have never given up hope on you to choose survival over personal greed. You record time by using different calendars, but here we should use our own and symbolic date that we shall use is our New Year's Day, which is the 6th of June, for which for a point of reference will be the year 7757, which is the date in history when we start the calendar again. After the last major global catastrophe on this planet. It was known as the day of resurgence, when we came back from the dead, as it were, to survive again. It has no meaning to you now. You have forgotten. So on this of all days we have chosen, it shall be a day of new beginning or the end. So sometime between now and that day, you and you alone will choose in person by replying to this message, this call for hope, whether it will be a new beginning or the end for all mankind. It's that serious. It really is. You have lived in a dream long enough. Time to wake up. Wake up. Wake up and remember. Those words that float across time and space. Time to fulfill your destiny. Remember, this is your world. We are merely here to help as guides. Like I said, that was 10 years ago. Perhaps people understand more having heard that when I did the Future of Humanity show, which was the very first must listen to show. The consequences that were facing humanity. It was going to end by 2012. All very interesting stuff and raises questions, to me anyway, as to why these clowns, as we call them, the Order, Illuminati, etc., which they termed as guardians, were allowed to continue when they clearly failed. Is it not the responsibility of the entities that appointed these guardians on humanity's behalf to deal with their poor choice in some aspects? Surely, if you are guides, you would also monitor them and react accordingly, not wait for them to go off the rails and then point fingers. Everyone has a responsibility as an individual and a collective. There was a dual responsibility here to a species, humans, that has and had been interfered with badly, and essentially children on a universal level. More should have been done, in my opinion. This is from Kim. They were warned just over 10 years ago, yet they persist like greedy little piglets, claiming they own this. They never did. Maybe it's time to remind them, as they all received this letter then. They also received a very harsh warning on the 13th and 14th of September 2019 from the new Queen, Ms. L. They know who she is, and they still are doing the same thing, clamouring like a bunch of fools for a position that doesn't exist. My own position was reaffirmed on this same day. I am doing the job that was outlined to me in detail with the detailed plan that was approved on the 15th of September 2019. That's the people's plan. They had none. The trust is no longer a singular name, no longer any person's name other than myself as signatory. Manor name has been removed, and I transferred funds out of these accounts again on the 2nd of October 2019. Everyone is disappointed on the higher levels, way over the families in humanity. You had one shot, people. If you receive this, it is because I think you may be in some position to reach back out to the order in some way, or in a position to propel humanity forward. Stop waiting for these people to save you, or control banks or governments. It is no longer their time. It's yours, and it's ours. Choose wisely. In 6 months' time, there will be nothing left. Literally nothing left for humanity. Everyone, including them, loses everything. Trading will resume, and clean-up will take place, and they will be gone from existence, exactly as the poem reads. Final warning. Final piece of intel. A few of the large banks and the Federal Reserve have pledged to work together with the trust to get liquidity into the banking system in 148 countries. They do have some opposition. However, it appears the tide is turning in our favour. More importantly, in favour of the people. Hi all and welcome back. going to go into some op-eds, or maybe not. Hi all and welcome back. Very talented, those two. Quite a variation that. People turn up to nice pleasant cellos and seemed very popular with the audience anyway. Perhaps we need a sum up of that last piece. Humanity was very close to being cancelled as a failed experiment back in 2012, which I relayed in the Future of Humanity, which is the first must-listen to show, as we then went into a new phase, a new time, and a new timeline. But also we went into a new frequency of space, which gave humanity a further opportunity to chart a planet in their image. Currently that image is not a good one. It's just not. Is it improving? Yes, it is. But much more needs to be done. You know, that letter to the Order, dragons and other clans, families, fake princesses and emperors and all that malarkey, all of it was false. But it could have also been said to humanity. That's why the appointed guardians that were supposed to look after humanity to begin with, because we haven't developed enough. And yes, we can roll out as excuses, plethoras of them. But like I've always said, there's no executive order stating that you shouldn't care for your fellow man, woman and child. None. If you don't care enough for others, the Iraqi children dying, the American children dying, the Russian children dying, then you're not in a heart space. Exactly the same as the Order. It's no different. Where greed overtakes need. And this is what this show has been all about from day one. Think and act different. Like I said, it's not a meme. It has to apply. Care for each other, which is a basic thing in life that we've forgotten. We've also forgotten the basics of how to think. Nobody thinks. They just make statements without realizing what they're actually saying. Reacting to headlines and not considering the bigger picture. All about the self and not about we. The shadow work, the inner work, is all part of you mastering the self, so you get the perfect alignment where you then not operate in dueling brain hemispheres with a closed third eye. But once you master those three, the alignment goes down to the heart center. And yet again, there's very few who operate from that space. Too many are dueling within their own heads, never mind with anybody else. That's not mastery of the self. So when I speak about being able to see, it's not just about using the eyes to see. That comes from a mastery of the self. That comes about elevating the self above the harvesting system known as the astral and going onto the mental planes, which requires vast volumes of responsibility, personal responsibility, which society, particularly in the Western world, reacts negatively to. It's always somebody else's fault. No, it's your fault and your responsibility, no matter what the circumstances are. Like these piece mentioned earlier, Planned Parenthood. Everybody's heard about it. How many have reacted against it? Very few. Unless it's happening to their child. That has to stop. That thinking, single-minded thinking, has to stop if we're going to progress the species. We will not progress the species competing against each other. Comparative mindset. Low vibrational thinking. That's the evolution. Living in fear. You create the fear, nobody else does. Oh, they can put out this, we're all going to die, and this, that, and the other. But it's your choice whether you react to that frequency. And we have a big chance. We have better people who are going to act as the future guardians. Who they are, I don't know. But 2, 5, 10, 20, 100 people as guardians is pointless if the rest of society is going to carry on in its greed, not need path. Acting in the mind, not the heart. A society devoid of empathy is a catastrophe, and that's what we have. And each and every one of us has an obligation to change that. Not just Kim, not just me, or anybody else, Trump, you name it. All of you. It's your life, it's your family, it's your country, it's your planet. It's a blank slate. Are you going to sit there and wait for somebody else, like the clowns have, which failed? Or are you going to be the creator, which is what you are, and create a new world, a new way of operating, and a better planet? Choice is yours. Op-eds. This is a nice amusing piece to start off with after that fairly heavy stuff. Headline from a certain alt media person this week: public warning. Ooh. I have uncovered new science, and POTUS Donald J. Trump is an AI-entrained host who is dragging a growing bulk of human souls into the looming AI singularity, where they will be lost to AI forever. That's his cosmic function in this AI soul harvest that is upon us, and is well documented in Wes Penra's timely free 2016 free ebook. You are hereby advised and warned. Not content with that, he went on. Coastal Ouch Pol Pot survivor introduces IBM Watson. IB Marduk machine. Benevolent AI from 2026 and a parallel universe here to help us raise human consciousness and stop Donald J. Trump becoming the president. Alfred Lebremont Weber. Oh dear. Dear me. I told you people would expose themselves and they would get ugly, didn't they? They are exposing themselves badly now, and it is getting ugly to watch. Did you know the cost of flying an F-22 Raptor is $34,000 an hour. Yes, you heard that right. And did you not know the 2013 cost of running an aircraft carrier was $6.5 million per day? Thought not. And if Alfred's banal rantings wasn't enough, we had this story this week. Following the behavioural scientist Magnus Söderlund appearing on Swedish state TV, saying to combine or to combat climate and deal with the looming food scarcity, we need to overcome the conservative taboo against human flesh eating. And then this woman came out.
We have to get rid of the babies. That's a big problem. Just stopping having babies is not enough. We need to eat the babies.
May you raise your hands, please? Okay. Great.
But we're not going to be here for much long because of the climate crisis. We only have a few months left. I love that you support the Green Deal, but it's not getting rid of fossil fuel. It's not going to solve the problem fast enough. A Swedish professor saying, we can eat dead people, but that's not fast enough. So I think your next campaign slogan has to be this: we got to start eating babies. We don't have enough time. There's too much CO2. All of you're a pollutant. Too much CO2. We have to start now, please. You are so great. I'm so happy that you're really supporting the Green Deal, but it's not enough. Even if we would bomb Russia, we still have too many people, too much pollution. So we have to get rid of the babies. That's a big problem. Just stopping having babies is not enough. We need to eat the babies. And this is very serious. Please give a response.
Thank you.
Oh dear. Yes, she was a troll in a way, some say. But the fact that all the portal people, news media for those new, portal people because their news is from a different world than ours, all rush to call her a troll or a plant is suspicious in and of itself. Either way, if she was, someone paid her to be a troll. Someone interested in swaying public opinion or issuing distraction pieces. But what is lost in all this is the overview aspect, an all too common theme. People react to the headline and don't see the bigger picture. But imagine if you went into the doctors and said, I want to eat babies, or the cop station. You would be arrested. But because the paid actor, Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, was there talking Langley script again, nothing. Why wasn't she arrested? Does she have children herself? And did the child protection step in? No. And nobody's asked that question. The meeting was all about the Green Deal, which if you are new to this group, is not what you think it is. It is a getting massively rich scheme by the Pelosi family. Oops. And Pelosi's husband is the main beneficiary of that deal. That's why they're pushing it. But this woman's no different to Greta Thunberg. It's all part of a system to create distraction and sway the public. And the pieces used are getting more and more bizarre by the day. Child pedophilia is okay, they say. Eat babies to save the climate. You just know someone will market that and we'll end up with jelly babies, cake babies, and they will post more Maria Abramovich spirit cooking episodes. Oh wait, they already have. And it's all designed to tell you it's okay to be sick and operate on the same levels as them. Dark. They've done it for thousands of years. It's what they do in secret meetings and underground bases, both ET and NT entities, plus hybrid humans, and some humans who have more of their genetics and DNA, or just mind-controlled into it via MKUltra. Their society and their world is breaking down rapidly now. And it's getting ugly, as I warned. Their claims and their statements get more ridiculous by the day, and it's both bizarre and funny at the same time. People are exposing themselves for who and what they are. It's not a coincidence. It's that time. And it's where they stand now. There's no masks, no illusions anymore, just plain ugly. And we have to have our wits about us and not immerse ourselves too much into their world. Keep your frequency high. They can't handle that frequency, and they will play games to lower it. But only you can allow them to do that. Next piece. So Trump is being carpeted over the Ukraine phone call now. No surprise after the Russian collusion failed. When he appeared to ask whether Biden family role in the Ukraine is legitimate. It's not. I can tell you that. 100% it's not. And yet again, no one asks the basic questions. Why hasn't the CIA, the NSA, and the Department of Homeland Security investigated that previously? Given it's a potential national security issue, is it not? Operating in other countries that involve government-level entities is surely as much of an issue as the alleged Russian collusion. Or do they just pick certain countries where it's okay? Well, who decides whether you can engage one country or another? We all know who that is. Well, you should do by now. Perhaps this headline gives you the answer. The CIA whistleblower complaint about his conduct on a call with Ukraine's president has turned into a full court impeachment scandal, with a second whistleblower about to enter the fray said to have an intelligence background. That's a misnomer. Why the secrecy of which intelligence background? No surprise it was the CIA with the first attempt, because they are the coup Trump spoke about, in my opinion. The lawyer who's bringing this case forward, Andrew P. Bakash, who just so happens to be a former CIA officer. Well, I would never have guessed that. It appears to always be them behind everything sinister and wrong about this country. It is they who dictate policy in this country, home and abroad. They with their dodgy intel, actually it's not dodgy, but fabricated information, who pushed us into several wars, some of them never ending. They who are involved in all the clandestine money-making programs, from gun running to drugs to trafficking, and it's they who assassinate leaders of other countries because they won't play their game. It is they who are involved in the climate change and the weather wars. They who control the new tech, given the U-2 spy plane story. They, who as mentioned earlier, are responsible for thousands of deaths during the most heinous experiments in this and several other countries. It is they who are involved in Hotel California project when missing in action or declared prisoners of war in Vietnam. No, they were not missing at all. They were flown into underground bunkers here in the US and treated to the most heinous experiments ever. It was they who did Project Phoenix. People will be familiar with that in a show not too far from here. In Vietnam, doing hideous torture techniques on the Viet Cong people who had done nothing to anyone in this country. It is they that cover up the ET disclosure. They who send hundreds of agents to create the news with fake scripts. They who took out JFK and Reagan, and they who are responsible for the deaths of 1.8 million Iraqis alone. I hope people understand now, with the exposure of these agencies, how little part the government plays in anything. Governments are not the problem. Ignoring the fact that it's not even a real government but a corporation. Governments have little to no say in anything. How many discuss policies or plans of the government in public? None. Why? Because these agencies run the show. And they're the ones that have to be stopped. One member recently, yet again, questioned my stance on Bitcoin and blockchain again, suggesting I should be more open to it. No. I know what they're up to. I've covered it in several shows, extensively in the Clowns in Panic show, and if you didn't grasp or understand the meaning behind that, you need to. People are allowing monetary exchange programs, which they have ran on us since the Templars and their fake crusades, to seriously cloud their judgments and opinions. Oh, we'll make money on it. Oh, it's bucking the system. No, it's not. Think different. Can it do good? Of course it can, but it won't. Not when it's ran by old world control systems. New boss, same as the old one. Only the consequences of being far worse than it is now. It will make fascism look like a picnic in the park by comparison. Go and watch Continuum and see. But remember in the Facebook Libra show, it was stated they have no funding for it. None. So the only way they're going to get funding is clearly unawake people buying their shit. That's the top and bottom line of it. They had no funds for the last 5 or 6 years, or even a decade, until stupid people bought Sims, Dongs, Dings and Dungs and whatever other name they come up with. That funded them. That failed. And so will the Bitcoin. But it's not about Bitcoin or monetary that bothers me. That is almost irrelevant. What they're doing is leading humanity into an all technological world with no creativity, no privacy, no free will, and transhumanism. The machine that they're trying to build with these blockchains will run and control your life. We've forgotten we are creator beings, not bots. And the problem, if people listen closely to the Clowns in Panic show, the people are aiding them in their own downfall. They are providing the funding and the data levels via the blockchain and the Bitcoin. I will have no more to say on that. It's like talking to a brick wall. Mr. Adam Schiff. Sounds like Schiff. Is in the firing line this week. Let's have a look at Mr. Schiff, shall we? Well, his stance on Trump has kind of been well documented by the Portal people. Received and supported by the treasonous Portal people, I might add. But let's look into his background, shall we? We may unearth some more repeating patterns. Adam Schiff, born in Framingham, Massachusetts, son of Edward and Cheryl Ann Glovsky Schiff. He was raised in a Jewish family. Oh dear. While he was an assistant US attorney, he gained attention by prosecuting a case against Richard Miller, a former FBI agent convicted of passing secret documents to the Soviet Union in exchange for a promised $65,000 in gold and cash. It's funny, Mr. Schiff never spoke about people in his own party doing deals and secrets to Russia, China and Israel, isn't he? Schiff voted in favour of the 2003 invasion of Iraq, which was based on faked evidence and was another agency-based plot. And Schiff was asked if he regretted voting to invade. He said, absolutely. Unfortunately, our intelligence was dead wrong on that. On Saddam at the time. Clearly, his judgment is suspect. That suspect judgment cost 1.8 million people's lives. Yet curiously, despite being a former US attorney, has not requested those who posted that false evidence and false intelligence to be investigated or prosecuted. Nothing. Oh, sorry about that, we got it wrong. And no consequences? With near 2 million people dead? This is what's wrong. People don't ask the right questions. They look to the headline. Then, yet again, who was prosecuted for that false evidence? Nobody. Because nobody asked. Schiff has currently been working on the fantastic program that's going to help so many people in California of reducing helicopter noise. Ooh. By proposing legislation to force the FAA to study and regulate helicopter noise in Los Angeles. And he drafted a bill, the Helicopter Noise Relief Act. That's going to feed lots of people, isn't it? And Schiff worked with Senator Dianne Feinstein, no surprise there, to push the FAA to act. I would think California has far more pressing problems than helicopter noise, but links with Feinstein is suggestive, is it not? Now, Schiff was appointed as the House Select Committee on Benghazi in 2014 by, it's that link again, Nancy Pelosi this time, to serve as one of the 5 Democrats on the committee. And Schiff had participated in the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence Investigation into the attacks on the Benghazi diplomatic compound. which found that the initial talking points provided by the intelligence community again were flawed, but without an intention to deceive. Yeah, right. And that diplomatic facilities across the world lacked adequate security. Now, those people were sacrificed, as we all know. And yet again, the same intelligence agencies were involved. So now Mr. Schiff has stated twice he believed our intelligence agencies acted wrongly, and yet as a US attorney, neither of them he pursued. The latter of which left 4 Americans dead, and yet no actions were taken. Suppose he has the same stance as Hillary and just shrugs his shoulders and says, what difference does it make? Well, it makes a lot of difference to those 4 American lives and the 1.8 million Iraqis' lives that have been wiped off the face of the map. In 2015, Schiff supported the Saudi Arabian-led intervention in Yemen. Intervention means bludgeon. Saying the military action by Saudi Arabia and its partners were necessitated by the illegal action of the Houthi rebels and their Iranian backers. You always got to throw Iran in. You'll find out why shortly. But was that decision based on intelligence information as well, Mr. Schiff? That has cost 233,000 Yemeni lives, Mr. Schiff. So that's 2 wars you've voted for that has cost 2 million people their lives, and thousands of other injured, and hundreds of thousands homeless. Schiff has also been a forceful proponent of debating and voting on a new war, not content with being part of killing 2 million people. He wants to go against ISIS. Based on what, Mr. Schiff? Faulty intelligence again? What if the intelligence group that are giving you the alleged intelligence are the actual group you're going to fight against? Oops. Schiff has also been a prominent supporter of national defence spending, has voted for every increase in the defence budget over the course of his career. On March 22nd, 2017, in an interview with Chuck Todd on MSNBC, Schiff claimed that there was more than circumstantial evidence now that Donald Trump's campaign colluded with Russia. That proved to be false as well, Mr. Schiff, didn't it? Not doing very well, are you? Schiff is a supporter of Israel. Oh my. And on December 2016, Schiff urged President Obama to veto UN Security Council Resolution 2334, which condemned Israeli settlement buildings in the occupied Palestinian territories as a violation of international law. Then in February this year, Ilhan Omar tweeted, "It's all about the Benjamins, baby," in reference to the American politician's support for Israel, and invoked the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC. And many Democratic leaders, including Schiff, condemned the tweet, which was interpreted as implying that money was fueling the American politician's support of Israel. And Schiff said it was never acceptable to give voice to or repeat anti-Semitic smears. It's also not acceptable for people to support a sadistic foreign country's leaders and their genocide plans either, Mr. Schiff, including their own people. And after the news that the CIA concluded that the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had ordered the assassination of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, Trump said there was insufficient CIA evidence to link bin Salman to the murders. Schiff, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, was briefed by the CIA on the agency assessment, of course he will, and stated afterwards that Trump was being dishonest about the CIA findings. Yet given that agency's previous record of false information, yet Schiff suddenly jumps to protect the CIA. An all too common trait as reported in the recent From Russia with Love show. All too eager to protect interests in Israel and crimes done by the CIA and the old system. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back to the final portion of tonight's show. Some nice word magic was done on a video, the latest video from Yellow Rose of Texas, which I thought would be useful. The term federal, which means fee due L. So that means fee due to God, federal. Also, fiduciary, we've covered that name of the certain Nazi on the alt media. So that means fee due to agent, except fee means cattle. Yep, you look it up yourself. Fee is an old word for cattle. The cattle are us. So, federal means cattle due to God. And Anna von Reitz is claiming us as cattle as their agent. Oops. Royal. Roy means king. Al, along with L and Il, means God. So, God King or King for God. All those titles you now know are fake. Same as papal. Pap is father, Al is God, hence the Godfather and the links with the mafia. Trump finally said in this past week what we've been saying on this show for the last few years. And Kim's been telling all and sundry that will attempt to listen. But this country is under attack from within. And he said, as I learn more and more each day, you know where that's coming from, I'm coming to the conclusion that what is taking place is not an impeachment, it's a coup, intended to take away the power of the people, their vote, their freedoms, their Second Amendment, religion, military, border wall, and their God-given rights as citizens of the United States of America. That was Trump this week. He's learning. Now, 18 US code S squiggle symbol sign 2385 covers overthrow of the government. And this is what it says. Whoever knowingly or willfully advocates, abets, advises or teaches the duty, necessity, desirability or propriety of overthrowing or destroying the government of the United States or the government of any state, territory, district or possession thereof, or the government of any political subdivision therein by force or violence, or by the assassination of any officer of any such government, or whoever with intent to cause the overthrow or destruction of any such government, prints, publishes, edits, issues, circulates, sells, distributes, or public displays any written or printed matter advocating, advising, or teaching the duty, necessity, desirability, or propriety of overthrowing or destroying any government in the United States by force or violence, or attempts to do so, or whoever organises or helps or attempts to organise any society, group, or assembly of persons who teach, advocate, or encourage the overthrow or destruction of any government by force or violence, or becomes or is a member of or affiliates with any such society, group, or assembly of persons, knowing the purposes thereof, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years, or both, and shall be ineligible for employment by the United States or any department or agency thereof. Following for the 5 years next following his conviction, if 2 or more persons conspire to commit any offence named in this section, each shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years, or both, and shall be ineligible for employment in the United States or any department or agency thereof for the 5 years following his conviction. As used in this section, the term organisers and organise with respect to any society, group, or assembly of persons, including the recruiting of new members, the forming of new units, and the regrouping or expansion of existing clubs, classes, and other units of such society, group, or assembly of persons. The media and the Democrats and the agencies have all fallen foul of that rule. Now, the S symbol, the squiggly S, is described as the area sign Unicode U+0087 squiggly S segment sign, and it is a typographical character utilised essentially to allude to a specific segment of an archive, for example, a lawful code. Not legal, lawful. It is additionally called a twofold S and sectional image. Twofold S. That is SS. Connecting more dots and symbols now of who runs the legal system. So it's all there, Mr. Trump. The agencies, the Treasury, yes, you, Mnuchin, the Fed, elements of the military, foreign national and dual citizens agents, Democrats and the media are all complicit in attempting to overthrow the government. Use it. The law's there. That's what it's there for. Final piece. People often ask why things are taking so long, but forget that in many aspects, those that ask that question have done very little to engage the problem and become the solution, all to intent of externalising the problem and not internalising it is the issue. Very few have took part in the real changes on this planet. And the reason is because many never believed enough in themselves People ask, how can such and such do this job? Why them and not me? But the role of planetary liberation was open to all organic human souls. Too few answered is the harsh truth. Too many distracted by life and all of its trials and tribulations. Yet the art of being involved on that level may only take a 15-minute nap out of one day a week. Others, it is longer over many days of the week, in some cases every day of the week, depending on what the individual is participating in. There's many nights I can't go to sleep before 4 a.m. I'm part of a protection team. Midnight to 4 a.m. is known as the witching hours, where the demons, jinns and the night crawlers come out to play. As during those hours, all organic humans' PSI fields is at its lowest ebb. But if you analyse it really, it hasn't taken so long if you really understood what's been going on here. A split second out of a whole day is about the time it's really taken. You could actually say a split second out of a whole year. Or a split second out of thousands of years. The very first From Russia with Love goes back 110,000 years. And the dark forces. And yet what has been done in this past decade is beyond extraordinary. But given the Western world's propensity of everything must happen now or yesterday, it's not surprising how so many ask, when is it happening? I would ask back, what is it that is happening that you are referring to? And you'll get many answers, many different answers back. And it's a case of not defining what you are asking for again. And people wonder why their manifest abilities don't work too well. We've been dealing with a planet and beings that have been in a reduction program over a prolonged period of time. Minds, brain, spirit, essence, energy, eyesight, hearing, life, longevity, size and stature, done by various entities including our own, involving magic, witchcraft, dark arts, genetics and technology. The externalizing of everything from Source God, of praying outside, asking for forgiveness from outside, asking for machines to do what we could do naturally is another external aspect. We allowed ourselves to diminish that far. That left us wide open to systematic abuse. We lost touch with ourselves, our heart centre, our natural law rules, our connection to source, asking for truth instead of knowing the truth, demanding sex when we need love. Love became a distortion and seen as a weakness, particularly in the male circles. Males sought external strength and denied their internal strength, which is far more powerful. Females sought external beauty over internal beauty, which is far more enriching. There has been an escalation in degradation of our species, particularly since technology became mainstream. As labels, name-calling, people being unkind to each other, people invading other people's lives via social media, People display in their lives habits and behaviours that leaves nothing to the imagination anymore. Imagination is the ultimate in creativity, which has been criminally overlooked and lost over the last 3 decades in particular. Those without imagination create and bring problems. Those with it bring solutions when applied properly. His story replaced our story, and the people all gobbled it up and defend his story at all costs, even though their inside is screaming at them. This is bullshit. But did you ever notice the sleepers all live busy or busying lives? They all do. Why? Because if they sat down in peace for a few minutes, their higher self would scream at them, "Wells the Fargo are you doing?" You see, peace and quiet to them is a reflection. Too few of them will even attempt to look at. So you end up with ignorant peoples busy in their lives to ignore reality, because heaven forbid they would then actually have to take some responsibility in life for themselves, never mind anybody else. These people then get mired in other malignant life infections that appear as external face problems, but are actually indicative of a failed and unaddressed internal problem. Out comes selfishness, unbalanced ego and greed. The latter allows them to create another distraction, is let's have loads of everything that I can buy to make the self feel good externally. But no matter how many cars, toys, trinkets, clothing or homes you buy, life never actually improves, does it? Humans have since day one fell for the seducement program, which is again external gratification, badges, titles, money, land, technology and self-importance motives has come at a very expensive cost to those not getting the seducements, but at great internal cost to those who sold themselves out to gain those seducements. That cost is now really coming home to roost. The message from the Queen mentioned in the Intel piece and the other lengthy message to the clowns and the order told you that. That cost is now coming home to roost. They, over a very short period of time, they will meet their masters. It will not be a pleasant event for them. Failure to carry out plans comes at a high cost on that end of the spectrum. They failed as guardians, failed to carry out the plan, and failed to restore the planet. Heed the warning she gave you all very clearly. You have months to start and enact on our plan. That was agreed to and signed off on. Our plan, not your plan. You have no plan. You have months now. After that, for you, it's bye-bye. As you will not be allowed to hinder this planet's restoration. The message is clear. and yet you still sit there like startled rabbits in the headlights, waiting for Pindar to announce something. It doesn't exist anymore. Waiting for old Chinese people to deliver your RV funds. It never existed to begin with. Waiting for Rothschilds to deliver your money. They never delivered when they had funds, have less chance of doing so now courtesy of their fire sales. Rothschilds had no plan because it all failed. And they asked you to come up with a plan, and you all failed. Waiting for chosen ones, M1s, fake trustees, some biblical character, fresh air tokens to save you. They won't, as they all failed as well. The other species are not interested in you either, so they won't save you. You have nothing left to hold on to except pride and illusion. Pride is the mask of one's own faults. Pride is the mother of arrogance. Pride becomes before the fall, meaning that arrogance is a precursor to your downfall. Yours has been spectacular in both its scope, depth and speed, unrivaled in history on this planet. Oops. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.